for our first speaker of today, and I just got the message. I totally forgot to tell you that he's also doing a workshop at the NGDE conference at the day before that. He is a core member of RxJS, and he will tell you something about RxJS and all its beauty in the German.
Sure.
Give a warm applause for him.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here this day. This beautiful weather, which is much too warm for me, honestly. So I will tell you about something about RxJS multicasting. Who already is familiar with that term, particularly? That's much more than last time. It doesn't count. Okay. So first of all, a short disclaimer. The thing is with RxJS, it's not dangerous in general, but there are some hidden paths which you might not want to take, and you should take a bit of care at those. And if you run into any kind of issues, ask the community for help. There's a Slack channel, I can invite you to that. There's a huge community on Twitter, you can drop me a message there. And there are a lot of people out there who can help you with any kind of issues. I promise that. Not particularly me, but there are some people. I heard of them. So, some terms about me. My name is Jan Niklas Wortmann. I'm 24 years old. I'm a software consultant for Opus Consulting, which is also sitting here in Berlin. Since last year, I'm core team member of the RxJS team. I'm also organizing a meetup. Martin promised me to be there last year, and he still didn't took that.
I decided to do a conference. I'm sorry.
No, doesn't count. Absolutely not. And I'm also a barbecue lover, so if you have any fancy recipes or something like that, just drop them to me. I'm anyway interested in them. Doesn't matter even if it's vegan or some kind of stuff. Okay, so let's get to the RxJS multicasting jungle. And to get into that, we have to cross the unicast bridge. So unicast in general is the most general term for RxJS because who heard about the term RxJS observables are cold? Anyone? That's more like a half a thing. So cold and unicast is completely the same. Sounds confusing, and honestly, it slightly is. But the thing is, a cold observable just means that the stuff where the data comes from for each observable isn't shared across the subscribers. So what that means is everyone who subscribed to that observable will get its own instance. So for example, I'm doing an HTTP call. Everyone who subscribes to that will perform a new HTTP call every time. That's the thing with a cold observable or a unicasted one. In contrast to that, the multicast is pretty much the same, just that we share the producer instance across all subscribers. So for the same example, we're having an HTTP call. We just perform the HTTP call one and pass the result to every subscriber. So even with none of those fancy RxJS operators, everyone heard of them, we can just create an observable with the results of that HTTP call, and we had a multicast observable. Cool, right? Cool, very cool. So if it would be that easy, I'm not here for that, right? So I want to start with some of the basics for multicasting now. And for that, we will start with the subject itself, because the subject is the base of every multicasting operator in RxJS. Deep in the program implementation details, somewhere there is a subject hidden, I promise you. And that's the reason why I took the tiger image, because it's the king of multicasting. Correct. There are more of those bad word choices, I promise you. So the subject in general is a combination of an observable and an observer. So what that means is we have an observable, we can subscribe to that like everything else, but the nitty-gritty detail is we have an expose next error incomplete function which you can call from the outside world to pass notifications to all the subscribers. And for sure, this is still too easy for RxJS. There are different kind of subjects. So we have the basic subject, which is the basic implementation for all the others. And just like I said, it's an observable and an observer. and it passes all notifications to each subscriber. But this means if I subscribe after someone called next, this notification is gone, just passed to no one, because there isn't any subscriber, it's just lost. And that's a different for the behavior subject. This is the one which is mostly used in Angular applications. The behavior subject caches the most recent value, the most recent notification. So we have some kind of buffer there, which stores the value and passes this one to all the new subscribers. So even though there's value passed without any subscribers, someone came there, subscribed, you will get the latest value emitted anytime. There is also a replay subject, which is the one which is the most difficult from the implementation detail, because it's much complicated with all the scheduling stuff and time thingies. You don't want to get into that, I promise you. But you can configure how many notifications you want to store there. So you can say in the initialization, I want to store like 10,000 items or notifications, and as soon as someone subscribes, he will get those 10,000 notifications. The default there is that he gets all notifications. So if you adjust for a new replay subject, any new subscriber will get immediately, as soon as he subscribes, all notifications. And afterwards, for sure, all new ones. And the last one and the most unknown one is the async subject. I think it's just implemented for consistent reason. I really don't see any cool benefit with it from my own perspective, and for now, I just saw it once in an implementation for the Angular docs. And what it does is stores the last notification, but just emits that as soon as the subject itself is completed. So there are maybe some use cases if you are having really heavy async stuff. You don't want to manage that with RxJS for some reason, even though it's made for that, but I don't know. In that case, you can, at the very end, say, okay, now the subject is completed, and please pass the latest notification to all my subscribers. It's really not that cool, honestly. So there maybe are some use cases, but you can do it with all the others too. Yeah. But just to have all of those here, those are all subjects RxJS implements and provides for you as API users, even though you may not use the async. Okay, let's come to multicast itself, because just from the subject itself, that isn't really multicasting. And now, hopefully, the live coding is working much better than the last time, because I totally screwed up the last time. We will see.
But it's normal in live coding.
True. So, I'm sitting comfortable, I don't know what's about you, but I prepared a little stacklet for now.
Can you increase the...
Just for you, because you joined my meetup recently.
He deserves that time.
So, let's shortly, I will demonstrate the difference again between multicast and unicast, just to have it clear for everyone. And afterwards, I will shortly demonstrate how multicast is implemented in RxJS roughly. So, unicast. So, for example, we can use interval for that and use proper brackets here. Everyone knows the interval operator?
What does it do?
What does it do? It emits notification counting from 0 upwards every n seconds, which is configurable, I think, yeah. So I import it, and like every other creation operator, I import it from RxJS directly. And I can say, for example, pass a notification every second, and to have a clear log at the right side, we will do it like this, and pass it to property. So the first time I subscribe to that and log that value, we will hopefully see something happening here. Yeah. Every second it starts counting from 0 and upwards. So now if I would do a set timeout, for example, and do another subscribe in that, just to have a bit of a delay here, and again, we are using console log for that value. Just let's say 2 seconds. So we have the first subscribe immediately, and afterwards we have a new one which starts again from 0. Okay? This is the important part here. And they are completely independent from each other. None of those can incorporate with each other, and they are really completely independent. So I can do pretty much the same with the, if I want to have a multicasting, right? So sometimes there are like heavy operations or some kind of stuff like that, and I don't want to reoperate all that stuff for each subscriber, like an HTTP call for it, or like this heavy interval here. So what I could do is, instead of, I will shortly remove that to have a clear history on the right side, I can use a subject. Also, I import it from RxJS, and I say consult a new subject. That's the way I initialize my subject, and I use this subject to subscribe to that interval. Source.subscribe. And the cool thing here is, because the subject is an observable and an observer, I can directly pass it to the subscribe function, which just takes an observer. Looks weird at the first time, but it's kind of cool, because now it will also pass each errors and complete notification to the subject. So, but still nothing happens, even though I subscribed. And the thing is, I also need to subscribe to my subject to start something to happen. Okay, so if I now...
Is it really something nothing happened, or is it because you didn't console log anything?
Valid point, but I promise you nothing happens.
Sorry.
I can demonstrate it. Just for...
No, I mean...
No.
Okay.
You got totally valid point.
I trust you, you know.
That's very bad from you. So, you know the tab operator? Everyone knows that.
STDirger error.
The console log of RxJS.
So, you didn't trust me.
No.
And you're completely right. So the thing is, what I want to do is shortly prevent that from logging. So what I want to demonstrate is that those notifications are shared across all the subscribers. That's the point I want to demonstrate here. So if I now subscribe multiple times to the subject and type properly, subscribe, very difficult word. And also the thing with the set timeout, like before.
I think you have to pass something to console log.
You are absolutely right.
I think you can just leave console log as it.
No, it didn't.
But then you...
No, I mean without error function.
Yeah, that will work. If you just pass.
But there could be issues.
Okay, let's not get deep into that.
Last time I pretty much screwed up here, so this is a very difficult moment for me.
Maybe we should cheer you on.
Yeah.
Jan.
What
You're
about
doing great.
You want a beer?
Oh, definitely. So, the subscribers are passed, and each one gets the same value at the same time. Cool, right? And to make it an RxJS way, because what we did now is we have all the subscribers to our subject. Thank you very much.
That helps?
Yes.
That's the Angular community. Always caring for each other.
So the thing is, what I wanted to demonstrate here is the problem we have we have now 2 subscribers, and each of them get the same values, which is quite cool. But we have still subscribed to the source observable, which is the interval in this term, and subscribe to the subject itself, which stores the data for us. And this is not the cool and fancy way RxJS would do it, because we don't know when you want to subscribe to that source observable, when you want to start emitting that, because it's never going to stop. Even though all of the subscribers would unsubscribe from the subject would still be subscribed to the source observable and continue emitting notifications every second I configure. So what would be really cool now is to provide like a function, something like connect, for example, which does exactly this and returns the subscription instance of this. And
A function connect.
Or like that. I feel like function would have been shorter.
no. The cool thing here is that we now are able to manually unsubscribe from the source observable, but this isn't really reactive, right? We have to call a second function connect, even though there are multiple subscribers. So you're already seeing some issues with that. But let's come back to multicast, which provides several fancy cool operators. And this was really uncomfortable. I'm not able to pronounce that properly in English, so I will just skip that. What was it? Okay. I don't know. And I will never. So there are several ways the multicast operator works. So the way I just demonstrated is the way which returns a connectable observable. If you think there's just this weird observable in RxJS, you're slightly wrong, because there's also this fancy connectable observable, and I think there are also different ones which might not bother you, but the connectable observable could bother you because it's returned by the multicast operator, sorry. And the operator itself works just like I demonstrated it here slightly. You have to pass a subject instance there, and it will use that subject to subscribe to that source observable. You can also use any different kind of subject you like to. You can use a behavior subject, even an async subject, even though there's no JavaScript. And what is happening here, it's making a cold observable hot. So you're having an observable instance which used to be unicast before, but after calling the multicast operator, it's hot and shared across all other subscribers. As soon someone called connect to the connectable observable. Because that's a nitty-gritty detail you have to be aware of. Just if you call the connect function, it starts connecting the subject to the source observable, which makes its emitting value. And you have to handle those subscription instances separately. So you have now 2 subscription instances, or even more maybe, which you have to handle properly. And sometimes just the ng on destroy pattern with a take until doesn't work here, because you probably want to have it in a longer term, in a long way, because you want to share it across your whole application or something, and not just for a component. I just said already it's using a subject under the hood. That's why we heard of the subject title, right? The king of the multicasting genre. And the subscription is only happening once. So even though you would call connect multiple times or those kind of stuff, have multiple subscribers, it's just happening once. Here's a stack, you can use that if you want to play around with in that link in case of emergency. I used it the last time, it's maybe broken now that I'm talking about that. I will double check that afterwards. But that's the way the multicast operator works with a connectable observable. But that's still too easy for RxJS, right? There's a dark cave of multicast and this is the really complicated stuff of multicast. That's the most complicated stuff, I promise you. There's also a thing where it's using a so-called selector function, and you have to pass that into the multicast operator. besides the subject instance, or it isn't an instance anymore, as we see here, it's a factory. So every time we have a new subscriber, we get a new subject. Okay, we have now new subject, but then it isn't really multicasted, right? Because we have maybe multiple subjects under the hood which are separately subscribing to that source observable. And that's completely true. On my own, I wouldn't call it multicast for that purpose, but hey, that's like it is. But the thing why it is called multicast, and that's a valid point, is that inside this selector function, it is multicasted. I know. Totally complicated, overly complicated, and honestly, this weird stuff has very cool benefits because you don't have to use the connectable observable anymore. It's now returning just a casual observable, which you have to subscribe just the way you are used to it, right? But the complicated stuff is in that selector function because that one is multicasted. So everything, the source which is passed here is the shared instance of the producer. So there you can do something with the observable, with the multicast observable. And Nicholas Jameson, for example, I don't know if you heard of him, he's also an RxJS core member, has his own library with hundreds and thousands of custom RxJS operators. And for very cool stuff, he uses that way of handling multicasting, which isn't really a multicasted way. If you want to get deeper into that, you can check out the source code. That's much better than the docs at this point of time. Or this small example here, which hopefully somehow elaborates the way it's working. If not, reach out to me afterwards. I try to explain it better the next time. But the key difference is that it doesn't return a connectable observable anymore. So it subscribes to the source observable, but it subscribes for each subscriber new. That's the difference to the connectable one. Let's get to some much easier operators like multicast. Because publish, and I know that this isn't a Panther, but in the RxJS jungle there aren't any more Panthers, and there's a slight difference. You see the ears here, they are slightly bigger, like a casual Panther. Oops, sorry, I wanted to press the pointer, which isn't really working. Okay, so I prepared some fancy code here, which is not really prepared because it's from the source code of RxJS. More or less, I cut off some parts, but more or less it is the source code. So we see the implementation of the publish operator, which is well formatted 3 lines of code. That's quite good because it's just a convenience operator for using multicast properly. So we have an optional argument for the selector function. You could use that, but you don't have to. If you don't use that selector function, it just returns multicast, like we saw on the slides before, which returns a connectable observable, and so on and so forth. The thing is that for you, it is convenient to directly prepare the subject instance and pass it to the multicast operator. So that's really not that complicated. Publish is just a convenience operator passing a casual subject to multicast operator. And there are also all the other subjects with publish behavior, publish last, which should be publish async to name it properly for the async subject, but that's not my decision, and publish replay for you passing the replay subject to the multicast operator. Not that difficult, right? Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I already said that. Fancy animation.
Your viewer is exploding.
Yeah, I don't know if there's electronic festival.
Yeah. It's okay.
It's just your phone. It's
Yeah, no, it's actually yours.
Mine is working.
Mine is also fine.
Do you have a tissue like
Yeah.
10 minutes! You should have told me that before. Okay, let's continue with the ref compounder. And another bad word joke, because there aren't any red pandas in the RxJS multicast jungle. Okay. Thank you. So ref count is another RxJS operator for handling the references or counting the references of all the subscribers. And I have prepared this fancy animation. As soon as the first subscriber subscribe to the observable returned by the ref count operator. It has internally a counter which starts counting to 1. And as soon as one subscribes to that, the multicasted observable subscribes to that source observable and starts emitting some values. Thank you very much. There's still a lot of time. No pressure. Okay, but there is another subscriber and the counter starts counting up. And now all the notifications are passed to all new subscribers. Nothing really interesting at this point. But now it starts that one unsubscribed from the ref counted observable. The counter decrement, and as soon as the counter is at 0, the source observable is unsubscribed. Oops. Well, I thought there was another animation. But that's the point. Instead of calling connect for the multicast observable like we are used to it, we have this ref count operator which takes care of that for us. As soon as there's a subscriber, it starts connecting to the source observable as long as there are subscribers. And as soon as the subscriber counter is at 0, afterwards it will resubscribe to the source observable. And if we take the interval example again, during this life cycle demonstrated here, it would emit all the time and starts counting upwards, and afterwards it would unsubscribe. There isn't any subscriber, and as soon as there's a new subscriber, it would start counting from 0 again.
But if there is a replay subject, then will it take the previous before unsubscription event or not?
We will come to that. Valid point. Just a short summary here, and regarding the time, I will skip that. Let's come to share, because that's pretty much the thing you are talking about. Share is also very heavy code inside the RxJS console, the source code. It's just, even though it's a little bit of complicated written, it's just it's having a source observable, calling multicast to it, and calling ref count afterwards. I know it's written here the other way around. This is another syntax like pipe. You could use that inside your RxJS code, but you don't want to. So what shared is doing, it's a convenience method for calling multicast and ref count. And it just does like I described. As soon as there's a subscriber, it starts subscribing to the source observable as long as there's a subscriber. And there is a share replay, which is a convenience with using a replay subject, exactly like this, but just as long as they are subscribed.
So when every subscriber unsubscribed, then everything is gone. Okay. And then it's basically cold again.
Exactly.
But when only one subscriber, it's hot, right?
That's exactly the thing.
But hot with replay.
Hot with replay. So the new subscriber will get the latest values.
What about behavior? Behavior should hold the first value.
Sorry?
Behavior subscriber.
There aren't those. There's just share and share replay.
Okay.
I have no clue why.
But like, share replay with only one n should be the same as a behavior subject.
It is, more or less. There's a little bit of workload for scheduling things, but exactly. How much time do I have?
5.
Enough.
5 plus.
5 plus.
Plus minus 10.
So, a short wrap up. Multicast could be used inside your application for heavy operations, and sometimes you want to use it for HTTP calls and those kind of stuff. If you don't want to reperform it, you want to share it, you want to provide some custom caching mechanism, for example. There are use cases where you want to use it. You don't have to be fully aware of that. There is those things. You can also just use all the code stuff and improve later on. The very important stuff is, even though there is a multicast operator, there's a publish operator which just uses multicast, and share, which is convenience for ref count and plus multicast. And in general, subject to multicast. So you can also, even with like 5 lines of code like I did before, you can re-implement multicast more or less. RxJS all the time has some fancy nitty-gritty details which are very difficult to catch. But if you don't run into those, you're totally good to go, like I did it with my 3 lines approach. but that doesn't mean it. RxJS multicast operators, it's a huge topic, definitely. At this point, I want to thank Michael Lappi and Niklas Jameson, who provide me very valuable feedback for that demonstration and presentation. Especially Michael improved the slides itself heavily, because I'm very bad at design. And I added some links for you if you want to dig deeper into those stuff. I will share the slides afterwards for via Twitter if you. But most of them are from Angular in-depth because Niklas Jameson is writing amazing blog posts about RxJS. Very complicated at some point, but they are amazing. And afterwards, after I discussed the selector stuff with him, he probably tries to write a new blog article about it. Yeah, at this point, there's just one thing for me to say. Thank you very much for your attention. Are there any questions about multicast or RxJS? I have 5 minutes, plus minus.
I just don't want to have it like with Nia, where we had 2 hours overtime.
I have time.
Yeah.
If not, you can ask him afterwards. If you're shy, you can ask him after the last talk. We will hang around a little bit, and he will answer all questions in private if you feel like.
Try to.
He tries to.
Yes. Third question: when you do as observable on subjects, does it do multicasting?
No. What it just does, it strips out the next error complete function.
Okay.
So that you really have an observable instance and you can't call next to that. Otherwise, even though you wouldn't do it and types would think it is an observable because it implements the observable interface, it would totally work. But the problem is you could at runtime call next to it and your data flow would be totally messed up.
Okay.
So if you use the
Safety, it's just a safety. Okay.
yeah. So if you are using the service with a subject pattern or some kind of stuff like that, I would highly recommend using a public getter function with an as observable method comment.
Any further questions? Then I would say give a warm applause for Jan.